Hey, I'm Josh.
And I'm Parker.
And today we're making chocolate mousse. To make chocolate mousse, you need the ingredients, obviously. And we're going to start with 8 1-ounce squares of chocolate. It can be bitter chocolate or semi-sweet. We went with semi-sweet, which is 54% cocoa. Next, you're going to need 3 large grade A eggs. We got sugar. This is pure cane sugar, which is made in the U.S. And if it's made in the U.S., we know it's either from Hawaii or Florida, because they're the only 2 climates that grow sugar cane in the U.S. And finally, we have unsalted butter.
And chocolate mousse, which is a really rich and creamy dessert dish, actually gets its name from the French word for foam, mousse, obviously. It is an awesome dessert dish, best served cold, and I hope y'all enjoy it.
So the recipe calls for 8 pieces of semi-sweet chocolate, coarsely chopped. Since it says coarsely, you can kind of wing it, but remember, the smaller the pieces, the creamier a mousse will be, and that's what you're really going for. The recipe also says you can use bittersweet or semi-sweet. I went with the semi-sweet because that obviously tastes a little less bitter because of the chlorine or hydroxide atoms, which causes the sweet sensation in your mouth when you're eating. And as humans, our taste buds tend to favor sweet over bitter. That's why things like coffee and other bitters are acquired taste as you get older. And after you're done, this is what it will look like. That's 8 pieces chopped. Alright, next we need about half a cup of water. Come over here. To get the most accurate measure, you should set it on a level surface and check the meniscus, which is the curve in the middle of the glass. And just a little more. Now we got the coarsely chopped chocolate, the half glass of water. Next we need 2 tablespoons of butter. And this is already divided up for us. So, right here, and that's 2 tablespoons of butter. And butter is an emulsifier, as is chocolate, which helps suspend other liquids like oil and water and foods.
The recipe calls for us to mix chocolate and water with butter. Most recipes say for you to avoid at all costs mixing water with chocolate. However, in this instance, we are able to because of, like Josh mentioned before, butter is an emulsifier and allows water and chocolate to mix well. The recipe also called for this to be 1/4 of a cup of water. Josh said earlier that he was getting 1/2 of a cup of water, but we'll use the rest of the water in a little bit. And then here's the 2 tablespoons of butter Josh cut. And we're going to heat this in the microwave until it melts. And while we're doing that, we're also going to use the salt, egg yolks, and whipped cream. And then in another part that will help us to make the rich, smoothie chocolate mousse that we are so looking forward to.
While this is in the microwave, we're going to start on the next part of our recipe. The recipe calls for 3 egg yolks. Some recipes call for egg whites, some call for egg yolks, some call for both. It just depends on the recipe. Also, some recipes call for an additive like coffee or espresso just to bring out the sweet taste of the chocolate, but we decided to skip that. It's all a matter of preference, really. Alright. After we're done separating the egg yolks and the egg whites, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of sugar and then the rest of the water that Parker mentioned previously. The sugar's role is kind of obvious. It's to make the mixture a little sweeter. And the water dilutes the mixture that we saw earlier. Let's check on that. It's not quite melted all the way. Let's get another 30 seconds. Onto the sugar. Two tablespoons of sugar. So 1, 2. Let's make sure it's starting to smell good. Thinking one more go around. And the rest of the water.
This is the mixture you saw Josh just make. While the chocolate finishes melting in the microwave, I'm going to whisk it. Now, I'm going to whisk this until it's a solution. And you saw Josh pour the water into it before, which would make water the solvent and make it an aqueous solution, with the egg yolks and the sugar being the solvents. And the recipe calls for this to heat in a saucepan for approximately 1 to 2 minutes. Let's get all that in there. And so, you'll set the timer for 1:30 and cook it. And then continue to stir.
Right now I'm whisking the mixture that you saw Parker heat up earlier. And as I continue to whisk it, the proteins in the egg yolks are breaking down. And we learn in class that process is called denaturation. And during denaturation, as the proteins are breaking down, they stop performing their biological functions. Now, the recipe calls for us to mix chocolate mixture from earlier. And with this egg yolk and water mixture, looks so good. Looks like foamy brownies. Start mixing it up. It's starting to get that creamy, smooth texture that Parker was mentioning earlier. mix it up a little bit longer. That looks good. Alright. The next step in the recipe calls for us to put the solution on ice. So let me go get our ice. Alright. We have to put the solution on ice because, as you saw earlier, Parker was heating it up on the stove, so it's really hot, and chocolate mousse is a dish that's served cold. So the ice is cooling it down, and as the heat transfers from the pot to the ice, you can see the ice melting, and whenever heat is released, we learned in class that's called an exothermic reaction. After you're done letting it cool, we're going to come over here, grab this dessert tray. We're going to put a dollop into each one. The size is going to vary on each one, obviously, because you can't make them perfect. And it all depends on what you want. It can be like the small little chocolate mousse bites, or you can have like a bigger chocolate mousse. You can also add whipped cream to give it a sweeter, creamier taste if you like. But this looks so good, I think we're just going to leave it alone. Alright. After you finish putting in the dessert tray, the recipe calls for you to let it sit in a refrigerator for 4 hours or overnight, depending on how cold you want it. So we're going to leave that in there. And we're not going to, obviously we're not going to make you watch it sit there, so that's it.